Deanna Miller's knuckles whitened around her glass as Brett leaned closer, his alcohol-soured breath making her stomach churn. What had started as a promising Tinder date had devolved into a nightmare within the first 30 minutes. 2 drinks in, Brett had revealed himself to be nothing like his charming profile suggested. "So what's your problem anyway? You've barely touched your drink," Brett said, his words slurring slightly. "I'm paying good money here." Deanna shifted uncomfortably on her bar stool. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should probably head home." "Come on, the night's just getting started," Brett insisted, placing a heavy hand on her thigh. "Don't be such a prude." Deanna removed his hand firmly. "I said I'm leaving, thank you for the drinks." Brett's face darkened. "Seriously? You waste my entire evening and now you're just going to bail. What kind of excuse me?" A deep voice interrupted from behind them. "Is there a problem here?" Deanna turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man in a perfectly tailored navy suit. Despite his casual stance, there was something commanding about his presence that immediately drew her attention. "Mind your own business, man," Brett snapped. The stranger ignored him, his dark eyes fixed on Deanna. "Are you all right, miss?" "She's fine," Brett answered before Deanna could speak. "We're having a private conversation." "I wasn't asking you," the man said calmly, never taking his eyes off Deanna. "Madam," Deanna straightened her spine. "Actually, I was just leaving." Brett grabbed her wrist. "No, you weren't. We're not done here." In one fluid motion, the stranger stepped forward and gently but firmly removed Brett's hand from Deanna's wrist. "I believe the lady said she was leaving," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "And I suggest you let her do that without further difficulty." Brett stood, swaying slightly. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "Someone who knows how to treat a woman with respect," the stranger replied. "Something you clearly need to work on." Brett clenched his fists but seemed to think better of it as he took in the stranger's imposing build and the quiet confidence in his stance. Several patrons had turned to watch the confrontation. "Whatever. She's not worth it anyway," Brett muttered, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. He shot Deanna a final glare before stalking toward the exit. Deanna released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said to the man who had already taken a step back to give her space. "That was uncomfortable." "Nathan North," he said, offering his hand with a warm smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "And it was my pleasure. No one deserves to be treated that way." Deanna shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the expensive watch that peeked out from beneath his cuff. "Deanna Miller, can I buy you a drink to say thank you?" "I'd be honored," Nathan said, taking the seat Brett had vacated, "but I insist on buying." "You've had enough unwanted obligations for one evening." As Nathan signaled the bartender, Deanna studied him surreptitiously. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't quite place it. His dark hair was cut in an expensive style, his jawline strong and clean-shaven. When he smiled, a small dimple appeared in his left cheek, softening the otherwise sharp angles of his face. "So, Deanna Miller," Nathan said, turning those intelligent eyes back to her. "What do you do when you're not fending off rude dates at bars?" Deanna laughed, surprised at how quickly her tension had dissipated. "I'm an architectural designer at Howell and Associates downtown." "Impressive," Nathan said, genuine interest lighting his features. "Residential or commercial, both, but my passion is sustainable urban development. I'm working on a proposal for an eco-friendly mixed-use complex in the old warehouse district." "The Riverview Renewal Project?" Nathan asked, raising an eyebrow. Deanna blinked in surprise. "Yes, actually. How did you know about that?" A hint of a smile played around his lips. "I make it my business to know about promising development projects in the city." The bartender delivered their drinks, and Deanna used the momentary distraction to gather herself. There was something about Nathan's intense focus that made her feel both seen and slightly off balance. "And what about you?" she asked, taking a sip of her fresh drink. "What do you do when you're not rescuing women from bad dates?" "I'm in investments," Nathan replied vaguely. "Mostly commercial real estate and sustainable development, actually." That's quite a coincidence, Deanna said, tilting her head. Any projects I might know? Perhaps, Nathan said with that enigmatic smile again. The new solar-powered office complex on Lexington, the Affordable Housing Initiative in West Park. Deanna nearly choked on her drink. You're with North Enterprises? She suddenly realized why he had looked familiar. Nathan North wasn't just in investments, he was one of the most successful commercial developers on the East Coast, with a fortune estimated in the billions. His company was known for innovative, eco-conscious buildings that transformed struggling neighborhoods. Nathan nodded, looking almost apologetic. Guilty as charged. Your company's work on the Lexington project changed industry standards for sustainable commercial buildings, Deanna said, unable to hide her admiration. I studied it in my master's program. Now I'm the one who's impressed, Nathan said, his expression warming. It's not often I meet someone who gets excited about building efficiency standards and solar panel arrays. Occupational hazard, Deanna replied with a smile. Though I have to say, most people's eyes glaze over when I start talking about passive heating systems. Then they're missing out, Nathan said, his gaze never leaving hers. I find passion incredibly attractive, especially when it's for something meaningful. The evening stretched on as they talked, moving from architectural design to their favorite buildings around the world, from childhood spent in vastly different circumstances, to shared dreams of creating spaces that brought communities together. Deanna was surprised at how easy it was to talk to Nathan, how he listened with genuine interest to her ideas and challenged her with thoughtful questions. When the bartender announced last call, Deanna was startled to find that nearly 3 hours had passed. I should get going, she said reluctantly, reaching for her purse. I wasn't kidding about that early meeting. Of course, Nathan said, immediately signaling for the check. When Deanna reached for her wallet, he gently shook his head. Please allow me. It's been the most enjoyable evening I've had in a long time. Outside, the night air was crisp, the street quiet except for the distant sounds of traffic. Nathan looked down at her, his expression suddenly uncertain for the first time that evening. May I call you a car? He asked. I only live a few blocks away, I usually walk, Deanna replied, then hesitated. But thank you. Then may I walk you home? No pressure, just it's late. Deanna considered him for a moment. Everything about this evening had been unexpected, from the disaster with Brett to the surprising connection with this billionaire who talked about sustainable architecture with the same passion she felt. Against all her usual caution, she nodded. I'd like that, she said quietly. As they walked, their conversation continued, but Deanna was increasingly aware of Nathan's presence beside her, the light brush of his arm against hers, the way he subtly adjusted his long stride to match hers, the protective way he positioned himself between her and the street. At her apartment building, Deanna paused. This is me. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Deanna, Nathan said, his voice soft in the quiet street. Would it be too forward to ask if I might see you again? Deanna looked up at him, at the genuine warmth in his eyes, and made a decision. I'd like that very much. Tomorrow night, dinner, I know a little place that serves the best Italian food in the city. 7 o'clock, Nathan's smile was bright in the darkness. 7 it is. Good night, Deanna. As Deanna watched him walk away, she couldn't help but smile. Whatever she had expected from her evening, it certainly hadn't been this. The following morning, Deanna arrived at her office early, determined to get through her workload before her unexpected dinner plans. Her colleague and best friend, Ellie, noticed her unusual energy immediately. Someone's in a good mood for a Wednesday, Ellie commented, leaning against Deanna's desk with a steaming cup of coffee. I take it the Tinder date wasn't a total disaster, Deanna grimaced. The Tinder date was actually horrible. Then why are you practically glowing? Ellie asked, confusion evident on her face. Because after the disaster date left, I ended up spending the evening with Nathan North. Ellie's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Nathan North, as in North Enterprises' Nathan North, the billionaire. Deanna nodded, a small smile playing around her lips. The very same? How what? Ellie spluttered. Start from the beginning and leave nothing out. As Deanna recounted the previous night's events, Ellie's eyes grew progressively wider. So you're telling me that a billionaire rescued you from a bad date, spent 3 hours talking architecture with you, and is taking you to dinner tonight? Ellie summarized when Deanna finished. That's some Cinderella-level stuff right there. It's just dinner, Deanna said, trying to downplay her excitement. He probably takes different women out every night. I don't think so, Ellie said, pulling out her phone. After a few moments of scrolling, she turned the screen toward Deanna. According to every gossip site, Nathan North is notoriously private about his personal life. There are hardly any photos of him with women, and the business press calls him married to his work. Deanna pushed the phone away. I'm not going to Google stalk him before our first real date. Fine, but at least let me help you pick out what to wear, Ellie insisted. This is not the night for that sensible black dress you wear to every work function. By 6:30 that evening, Deanna was standing in front of her mirror, wearing a deep emerald dress that Ellie had insisted brought out her eyes and made her look like $1,000,000. He's worth billions, so we needed to aim high, Ellie had joked as she helped Deanna with her makeup. When the doorbell rang precisely at 7, Deanna took a deep breath to steady her nerves before opening the door. Nathan stood there in a charcoal suit that made his shoulders look even broader, a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. His eyes widened slightly as he took in her appearance. You look absolutely beautiful, he said, his voice warm with admiration. Thank you, Deanna replied, feeling her cheeks warm. You clean up pretty well yourself. Nathan smiled, revealing that dimple that had occupied far too many of her thoughts over the last 24 hours. These are for you, he said, offering the flowers. I remembered you mentioned liking wildflowers more than roses. Deanna was touched that he had remembered such a small detail from their conversation. They're perfect. Come in while I put them in water. As she arranged the flowers in a vase, Deanna was acutely aware of Nathan taking in her small but tastefully decorated apartment. Unlike many of her colleagues who spent their salaries on expensive furniture to impress, Deanna had filled her space with items that meant something to her: photographs from her travels, bookshelves overflowing with architecture books, and a few carefully selected pieces of art from local artists. This place is very you, Nathan commented, examining a small architectural model on her desk. Did you make this? Deanna joined him. Yes, it was my graduate thesis project, a community center designed to be fully sustainable and serve as a disaster shelter if needed. Nathan studied it closely, his expression thoughtful. The design is innovative. Have you ever tried to get it built? Deanna shook her head. The funding required would be substantial, and most developers want proven concepts, not experimental designs from junior architects. Their loss, Nathan said simply, straightening up. Ready to go. The little place Nathan had mentioned turned out to be an intimate, family-owned restaurant tucked away on a side street. As soon as they entered, the owner greeted Nathan by name, leading them to a secluded table in a quiet corner. Marco's family has owned this restaurant for 3 generations, Nathan explained as they settled in. I helped his son secure financing to renovate the place a few years ago when the banks wouldn't take a chance on them. That was generous of you, Deanna said, impressed by the personal connection. Nathan shrugged. It was good business. They've tripled their revenue since the renovation, and I get the best table in the house whenever I want it. His eyes twinkled. Plus, Marco's tiramisu is worth every penny I invested. As the evening progressed, Deanna found herself increasingly drawn to the man across from her. Behind the billionaire facade was someone thoughtful and passionate, with a dry humor that matched her own. He spoke of his projects not in terms of profit margins, but in terms of how they affected communities and improved lives. What made you focus on sustainable development? Deanna asked as they shared the promised tiramisu. It wasn't exactly the trend when you started. Nathan's expression grew more serious. My father built his fortune on developments that maximized profit with little regard for environmental impact or community needs. When he died and I took over, I saw firsthand the damage his projects had caused displaced communities, environmental problems, buildings that would be obsolete within a decade. He paused, taking a sip of his wine. I decided then that I wanted to create a different legacy. Buildings that would stand the test of time, that would enhance rather than exploit communities. That's admirable, Deanna said softly. Many people would have just continued what was already working. I've never been interested in just doing what's easy, Nathan replied, his gaze holding hers. Some things are worth the extra effort. The intensity of his gaze made Deanna's heart beat faster. There was something happening between them that went beyond professional admiration or physical attraction, a connection that felt both exciting and slightly terrifying in its potential. As they left the restaurant, Nathan suggested a walk along the riverfront, which was beautifully lit at night. As they strolled side by side, their hands brushed accidentally, sending a jolt of awareness through Deanna. After the third such contact, Nathan gently took her hand in his fingers warm against hers in the cool evening air. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. Deanna nodded, unable to find words for the moment. They continued walking in comfortable silence, the city lights reflecting off the water beside them. "I have a confession to make," Nathan said finally. "I knew who you were before last night." Deanna looked up at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Your proposal for the Riverview project crossed my desk last month. North Enterprises is one of the silent investors in the selection committee." Deanna dropped his hand, taking a step back. "Is that why you approached me last night? Because of my proposal?" Nathan shook his head quickly. "No, absolutely not. I intervened because that guy was being a jerk, not because I knew who you were. I only realized who you were during our conversation." "But you didn't mention it," Deanna said, still wary. "I didn't want you to think I had ulterior motives," Nathan explained. "The truth is, your proposal impressed me even before I met you. Your design concepts are innovative and exactly the kind of sustainable development I believe in." Deanna studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. "So what happens now? Isn't this a conflict of interest?" "I've already recused myself from the selection committee," Nathan said. "I did it first thing this morning. Your proposal will be judged solely on its merits, regardless of whatever this is between us." His honesty and the steps he'd already taken to avoid impropriety reassured her. "Thank you for telling me," she said, taking his hand again. "And for recusing yourself." They continued their walk, the momentary tension dissolving as they fell back into easy conversation. When they finally reached Diana's apartment building again, neither seemed eager for the evening to end. "I had a wonderful time," Deanna said as they stood at her door. "So did I," Nathan replied, his voice soft in the quiet hallway. "More than I can express." He stepped closer, his eyes asking a silent question. When Deanna didn't pull away, he gently cupped her face in his hands and leaned down to kiss her. The kiss was tender at first, a gentle exploration, but quickly deepened as Deanna responded, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I'd very much like to see you again, Deanna, soon." "I'd like that too," she whispered. Over the next few weeks, Deanna and Nathan fell into a rhythm of dinners, walks, and long conversations that stretched late into the night. Nathan showed her parts of the city she'd never seen, taking her to small galleries featuring local artists and community projects his company had helped fund. Deanna introduced him to her favorite architectural marvels, pointing out details and design elements that most people overlooked. Despite his wealth and status, Nathan was refreshingly down to earth. He drove himself in a modest electric car rather than being chauffeured in a luxury vehicle, knew the names of the maintenance staff in his building, and seemed genuinely uncomfortable when people made a fuss over who he was. It wasn't until their fifth date that Deanna visited his penthouse apartment, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the city skyline. Unlike the cold, showroom-perfect homes of the wealthy she'd seen in magazines, Nathan's space was warm and lived in, filled with books, art from his travels, and comfortable furniture designed for actual use rather than just appearance. "This isn't what I expected," Deanna admitted as Nathan gave her a tour. "What did you expect? Gold fixtures and animal skin rugs?" he asked with a laugh. "Something less personal, I guess, more like a hotel and less like a home." Nathan's expression softened. "I spend too much time in hotels for work. When I'm home, I want to be surrounded by things that matter to me." As their relationship deepened, Deanna was surprised by how easily Nathan fit into her life, and she into his. He joined her for dinner with Ellie and her husband, charming them both with his genuine interest in their lives and his complete lack of pretension. When Deanna attended a charity gala as his date, he stayed by her side, introducing her to business associates not as his date but as an innovative architect whose work you should know about. There were challenges, of course. Deanna had to adjust to the occasional paparazzi who appeared when they dined at high-profile restaurants, and to the whispers that sometimes followed them. Nathan had to learn to accommodate her far less flexible schedule and modest budget, never making her feel inadequate when she couldn't match his spontaneity or resources. 4 months into their relationship, Deanna received the news that her proposal for the Riverview project had been selected. The official announcement came with a call from the selection committee chair, who emphasized that her design had unanimously impressed the panel with its innovation and practicality. Deanna rushed to Nathan's office to share the news, bursting past his startled assistant with an apologetic wave. "I got it! They chose my design!" she exclaimed as she entered his spacious office. Nathan looked up from his desk, his face breaking into a wide smile. "Deanna, that's wonderful. I knew they would see what I saw in your work." He crossed the room in a few long strides, lifting her off her feet in a celebratory hug before setting her down and kissing her soundly. "We need to celebrate," he declared. "Dinner at that French place you've been wanting to try," Deanna nodded, still giddy with excitement. "Yes, but first I need to call my parents and Ellie," and she broke off as Nathan dropped to one knee in front of her, taking her hand in his. "Nathan, what are you doing?" she asked, her heart suddenly pounding. "This wasn't how I planned to do this," he said, looking up at her with eyes full of emotion. "I had a whole evening planned for next week: dinner, the symphony, a walk through that garden you love." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "But seeing you like this, passionate, triumphant, absolutely glowing with achievement, I can't wait another minute to ask you to spend your life with me." He opened the box to reveal a beautiful emerald ring set in a simple platinum band. "Deanna Miller, you've changed my world in ways I never expected. You challenge me, inspire me, and make me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" Deanna's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at this powerful man kneeling before her, offering her his heart with the same openness and honesty he'd shown from the first night they met. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Nathan, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, before standing to kiss her again, this one full of promise and future plans. "How did you know my ring size?" Deanna asked when they finally separated. Nathan grinned, that dimple appearing in his cheek. "I may have enlisted Ellie's help." "So she knew this was coming?" Deanna asked, surprised her friend had kept such a secret. "She helped me pick out the emerald," Nathan admitted. "She said it matched the dress you wore on our first date, the one that made me lose my ability to form coherent sentences for a full minute." Deanna laughed, feeling a joy so complete it almost overwhelmed her. "I love you, Nathan North." "And I love you, Deanna Miller, soon to be Deanna North if you like." "I like very much," she replied, reaching up to kiss him again. 2 years later, Deanna stood on the rooftop garden of the newly completed Riverview complex, watching as community members explored the sustainable features she had designed. The project had become a showcase of urban renewal, done right, affordable housing units alongside market-rate apartments, commercial spaces occupied by local businesses, and green spaces that served both environmental and community needs. "Your vision brought all this to life," Nathan said quietly as he joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Our vision," Deanna corrected, leaning into him. "Your funding and support made it possible." "It was all you," Nathan insisted. "I just had the good sense to recognize brilliance when I saw it." Deanna smiled, placing a hand on her slightly rounded stomach. "Speaking of recognizing good things, do you think it's time we shared our other project with everyone?" Nathan's face lit up as he placed his hand over hers. "Are you ready? We can wait if you want." "I'm ready," Deanna decided. "Ellie's already suspicious, and your mother asked me 3 times last Sunday if I was feeling all right." As they made their way to the center of the rooftop, where friends, family, and community leaders had gathered for the grand opening celebration, Diana reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter at a bar to partners in life and work, their path had been unexpected but felt somehow inevitable, as if they had been designed to fit into each other's lives. Nathan clinked a glass to get everyone's attention, his other hand firmly holding Deanna's. "We want to thank you all for being here to celebrate this incredible project," he began. "But Deanna and I have another announcement to make today." He looked at her with such love that Deanna felt her heart might burst. "We're expecting a baby in the spring," she announced, her voice clear and joyful. As congratulations erupted around them, Nathan leaned down to whisper in her ear. "Who would have thought that defending a beautiful stranger from a rude date would lead to all this?" Deanna turned to kiss him, uncaring of the cameras and onlookers. "Sometimes being a gentleman pays off in ways you never expect," she whispered back. In the fading light of evening, with the city spread out below them and their future stretching bright before them, Deanna knew that some unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful stories of all.